The morning sun cast long shadows through the crystal trees of Xerion Prime as 8-year-old Maya Chen walked along the edge of the settlement. Her small hands clutched a worn medical scanner, a gift from her father before he left on another deep space mission. The human colony on this distant world was still young, barely 3 years old, and Maya was one of only 12 children living here. She had always been different from the other kids. While they played with toys and games, Maya spent her time learning about healing. Her mother, Dr. Sarah Chen, was the colony's chief medical officer, and Maya had absorbed knowledge like a sponge. But what made Maya truly special wasn't just her intelligence. It was something else, something the adults whispered about when they thought she wasn't listening. Maya could feel pain, not just her own, but the pain of others, animals, people, even the strange plants that grew on this alien world. Her mother called it empathic sensitivity, but Maya knew it was more than that. When she touched something that was hurt, she could somehow make it better. Her mother had run tests, but the results were always the same. Normal human genetics, no mutations, no alien contamination. Just a little girl with an impossible gift. The settlement's warning sirens had been silent for weeks now. The dangerous creatures that roamed Xerion's wilderness seemed to avoid the human colony, which puzzled the scientists. Maya suspected she knew why, but she had never told anyone about her midnight walks to the forest edge, where she had helped wounded creatures return to health. Today felt different. As Maya walked past the energy barriers that protected the settlement, her chest tightened with an overwhelming sensation of agony. Not physical pain, but something deeper. Terror, desperation, and the kind of hurt that came from being lost and afraid. She pressed her hand to her heart, trying to pinpoint the direction of the distress. The feeling pulled her toward the Singing Gorge, a deep canyon about 2 kilometers from the settlement. Maya had been there before with her mother during geological surveys. The canyon got its name from the way the wind whistled through its crystal formations, creating haunting melodies that could be heard from kilometers away. Maya looked back at the settlement, then at her communicator. She should call her mother, tell someone where she was going, but the pain was getting stronger, and she could feel that whatever was suffering wouldn't last much longer without help. Making a decision that would change everything, Maya turned off her communicator and headed toward the canyon. The journey took her through fields of luminescent grass that sparkled like jewels in the alien sunlight. Xerion Prime had 2 suns, and the smaller red one was just beginning its daily rise, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. Maya had always loved the beauty of this world, even though most of the adults complained about missing Earth. As she approached the Singing Gorge, the sensation of pain became almost unbearable. Maya had to stop several times, pressing her hands to her temples and taking deep breaths. Whatever was down there was hurt badly, and there was more than one source of agony. The edge of the canyon was marked by tall crystal spires that hummed with natural energy. Maya had studied these formations with her mother. They were made of a mineral unique to Xerion Prime, something the scientists called Xerionite. The crystals seemed to respond to emotional states, glowing brighter when people were happy or excited, dimming when they were sad or afraid. Now, as Maya peered into the canyon, the crystals were pulsing with deep red light, reflecting the pain she felt in her chest. The canyon walls were steep but not impossible to climb. Maya had done it before, though never alone. She secured her medical scanner to her belt and began the careful descent, using handholds carved into the rock by previous survey teams. Halfway down, she heard it, a sound unlike anything she had ever encountered. It started as a low whimpering, like a wounded animal, but there was something almost musical about it. The sound echoed off the canyon walls, mixing with the natural song of the wind through the crystals. Maya's heart raced as she realized what she was hearing. The colonists had found evidence of intelligent life on Xerion Prime, ancient ruins, sophisticated technology, even what appeared to be writing, but they had never encountered any living beings. The planet seemed abandoned, left behind by whatever civilization had once thrived here. But this sound, this cry of pain, was definitely coming from something alive and intelligent. Maya reached the canyon floor and found herself in a grove of smaller crystal trees. The red glow was stronger here, and the pain in her chest was almost overwhelming. She followed the sound deeper into the grove, pushing aside curtains of hanging crystal vines. That's when she saw them. Two creatures, each about the size of a house cat, lay tangled in a web of metallic wire near a crashed piece of technology. Maya's breath caught in her throat as she realized what she was looking at. The creatures had scales that shimmered like oil on water, constantly shifting between colors. They had long, graceful necks, 4 legs ending in delicate claws, and wings that looked like they were made of the same living crystal as the trees around them. Dragons. There were dragons on Xerion Prime. The baby dragons, for that's clearly what they were, looked up at Maya with eyes like liquid starlight. One of them tried to move toward her, but the wire had cut deep into its leg, and it collapsed with a sound that broke Maya's heart. The other dragon was worse off, with wire wrapped around its neck and one wing, the metal having dug in so deep that blue blood pooled beneath it. Maya approached slowly, her hands raised to show she meant no harm. The dragons watched her with intelligence that was unmistakable. They were afraid, but they seemed to recognize that she was trying to help. "It's okay," Maya whispered, though she doubted they understood her language. "I'm not going to hurt you." The closer dragon, the one with the injured leg, made a soft sound that reminded Maya of wind chimes. It was trying to communicate, she realized. The sound was weak, but there was a pattern to it, almost like the songs the canyon crystals made. Maya knelt beside the dragons and examined the wire that trapped them. It was some kind of alien technology, probably from the crashed device nearby. The metal was sharp and seemed designed to tighten when the victim struggled. The more the dragons had tried to escape, the deeper the wire had cut. But Maya could see something else. The wire wasn't just cutting them, it was doing something to their energy, their life force. The baby dragons were fading, not just from blood loss, but from something more fundamental. The wire was draining them, feeding on their vitality. Maya had never encountered anything like this before, but she understood instinctively what needed to be done. She couldn't just cut the wire away. She had to break its connection to the dragon's life energy first. Taking a deep breath, Maya reached out and touched the closest dragon's head. The moment her skin made contact with its scales, the world exploded into sensation. Maya gasped as she suddenly experienced the dragon's perspective. She could feel the wind beneath wings she didn't have, could sense the songs of the crystal caves where the dragon had been born, could understand the deep harmonies that connected all life on this world. But she could also feel the terrible wrongness of the wire, the way it was slowly stealing away everything that made the dragon who it was. The dragon's name was something like a melody, Lightweaver of the Morning Crystals. Its companion was Storm Chaser of the Deep Caves. They were siblings, born just weeks ago in the hidden city that lay deep beneath Xerion's surface. They had come to the surface out of curiosity, wanting to see the strange new visitors who had arrived on their world. But they had triggered some kind of ancient security system, a trap left behind by the ones who had tried to conquer their world long ago. The wire was designed to capture and drain any dragon it caught, feeding their energy back to weapons systems that no longer existed. Maya understood all of this in the space of a heartbeat. She also understood something else. She could stop it. Working purely on instinct, Maya opened herself to the dragon's pain and began to draw the wire's influence into herself. She had done something similar before with wounded animals, but never on this scale. The wire's drain was powerful, designed to overwhelm even an adult dragon's defenses. But Maya wasn't a dragon. She was human, and her biology was completely different. The wire's energy drain couldn't find purchase in her alien physiology. Instead of weakening her, the stolen energy simply flowed through her and dissipated harmlessly. As the wire's connection to the dragons broke, Maya began the delicate work of healing. She poured her own life energy into the wounds, knitting torn scales back together, repairing damaged wings, and restoring the vitality that had been stolen. The process was exhausting. Maya had never attempted anything this complex before. Her previous healings had been simple things: a bird with a broken wing, a tree damaged by lightning, small cuts and bruises on her friends. This was different. These creatures were far more complex than anything she had encountered, their bodies infused with energies she barely understood. But somehow it worked. As Maya's power flowed into the baby dragons, their wounds began to close. The deep cuts from the wire sealed themselves, leaving only faint lines that would fade with time. The damaged wings straightened, its crystal membranes regaining their lustrous shine. The drained life force returned, bringing brightness back to their starlight eyes. When it was finished, Maya collapsed backward, utterly spent. The dragons sat up slowly, testing their newly healed bodies. Lightweaver stretched its repaired wing, while Stormchaser touched its neck, where the wire had cut so deeply. Both dragons looked at Maya with expressions of wonder and gratitude. Lightweaver approached first, pressing its small head against Maya's hand in what was clearly a gesture of thanks. Stormchaser joined its sibling, adding its own gentle touch. Maya smiled weakly, still recovering from the healing. "You're welcome," she whispered. The dragons exchanged a look, then began to sing together. It was the most beautiful sound Maya had ever heard, like crystal bells mixed with ocean waves and distant thunder. The song seemed to carry meaning beyond words, speaking of gratitude, respect, and something else that Maya couldn't quite grasp. As their song ended, both dragons approached Maya and touched her forehead with their noses. For a moment, Maya felt a strange, tingling sensation, as if something was being written into her very cells. Then, with a final grateful look, the dragons spread their wings and took flight. They rose gracefully from the canyon floor, their wings catching the light of both suns. Maya watched until they disappeared over the canyon rim, heading toward the deep wilderness where the human scanners had never penetrated. Only then did Maya notice the changes around her. The crystal trees were singing softly, their previous red glow replaced by warm gold and silver light. The very air seemed cleaner, fresher, filled with a vitality that hadn't been there before. Maya stood slowly, her legs still shaky from the effort of healing. She looked at the scattered remains of the alien trap, now just harmless metal fragments. Whatever ancient evil had built this device was long gone, but its legacy of pain had continued until today. As Maya began the climb back to the canyon rim, she had no idea that her actions had already been noted by watchers far beneath the surface. In the crystal cities of the deep, ancient minds were stirring, discussing the impossible thing they had witnessed through their children's eyes. A human child had not only saved 2 dragons, but had done something that their own healers had declared impossible. She had broken a void wire trap with her bare hands and suffered no harm from its energy drain. Such a thing had not been seen since the earliest legends of their people. By the time Maya reached the settlement, the suns were setting, and her mother was waiting with barely controlled panic. But as Dr. Sarah Chen hugged her daughter, she noticed something different about Maya's eyes. They seemed to hold depths that hadn't been there before, as if the little girl had seen something that had changed her forever. Maya told her mother she had been exploring near the canyon and had lost track of time. It wasn't entirely a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. Some instinct told her to keep the dragons secret, at least for now. That night, as Maya lay in her bed listening to the distant song of the crystal forests, She touched her forehead where the dragons had marked her. The skin there was warm, and sometimes she could swear she saw a faint pattern glowing there when she looked in the mirror. She had no way of knowing that far beneath the surface, in a chamber carved from living crystal, an ancient being was making preparations for a journey to the surface. The Dragon Queen had slept for 1,000 years, but the healing of her grandchildren had awakened her to a truth that would reshape both human and dragon understanding. Tomorrow would bring changes that neither species was prepared for, but Maya Chen had set those changes in motion with nothing more than a child's compassion and an impossible gift she was only beginning to understand. Deep beneath the crystal mountains of Zarian Prime, in chambers that had never known the touch of sunlight, an ancient city hummed with sudden activity. The dragon realm stretched for kilometers through natural caverns enhanced by millennia of careful construction. Living crystal formed the walls, floors, and ceilings, pulsing with soft bioluminescence that created patterns of impossible beauty. Lightweaver and Stormchaser descended through the great spiral that led to the heart of their world. Other young dragons stopped their games and conversations to stare as the siblings passed. Word of their disappearance had spread quickly through the community, and their return was cause for celebration. But there was something different about them now. The mark that the human child had left on their foreheads was invisible to most eyes. But those dragons with the gift of deep sight could see it clearly, a symbol of healing that spoke of powers beyond their understanding. It was a mark that had not been seen in their realm for over 1,000 years. Elder Crystalwing was waiting for them in the chamber of returning, his ancient scales flickering with concern and relief. He had raised many young dragons over his long life, but Lightweaver and Stormchaser held a special place in his heart. They were the youngest grandchildren of the Queen herself, born during her great sleep, and their loss would have been devastating to their people. "Little ones," Crystalwing's voice resonated through the chamber like distant thunder. "The entire realm has been worried. What happened to you on the surface world?" Lightweaver stepped forward, her head held high despite her youth. "Honored Elder, we were captured by one of the old traps, the void wire snare that the destroyers left behind." A ripple of shock passed through the gathered dragons. The void wire traps were legendary nightmares from the ancient war, devices specifically designed to torture and drain dragons of their life essence. None had been encountered for centuries, and most believed they had all been neutralized long ago. "Impossible," breathed another elder, his silver scales dimming with distress. "The void wire would have killed you within minutes. How did you escape?" Stormchaser moved to stand beside his sister. "We didn't escape, Honored One. We were rescued." "By whom?" Crystalwing asked, though something in his ancient eyes suggested he already suspected the answer. "By one of the new arrivals," Lightweaver replied, "a human child. A little female with the gift of true healing." The chamber fell silent, except for the soft singing of the crystal walls. The dragon's emotional state always affected their environment, and now the crystals reflected their confusion and amazement with swirling patterns of light that had no words. Elder Void Hunter, scarred veteran of the ancient wars, stepped forward. His dark scales bore the marks of countless battles against the destroyers, who had once tried to claim their world. "You speak of true healing? Are you certain of what you witnessed?" "More than witnessed," Stormchaser said, his young voice carrying conviction that impressed the adults. "We felt it. She didn't just heal our wounds. She broke the void wire's hold on us. She absorbed its drain into herself and suffered no harm. She touched the deep currents," Lightweaver added, referring to the fundamental energies that connected all life. "We felt her merge with the harmony of the world itself, and when it was finished, she marked us." Both young dragons lowered their heads, revealing the invisible symbols that only the deep-sighted could perceive. Elder Crystalwing approached and studied the marks carefully, his expression growing more amazed with each passing moment. "These are healing marks," he said finally, "but not of any tradition I know. They carry the signature of the mark-bearer, and this signature—" He paused, his ancient mind working through implications that seemed impossible. "This signature is unlike anything in our records. It's as if the healing came from outside our reality entirely." She was strange, Lightweaver admitted. Her life song was unlike any we've encountered. But it was beautiful, Elder, full of compassion and strength. The gathered dragons began to murmur among themselves. The implications of what they were hearing would reshape their understanding of the universe itself. For thousands of years, they had believed that only dragons could manipulate the deep currents, the fundamental forces that connected all living things. The idea that an alien species, particularly these newcomer humans, could access such power was revolutionary. But Elder Void Hunter was thinking of more immediate concerns. If there are still active void wire traps on the surface, we need to locate and neutralize them. And if this human child can break them safely— He trailed off, the implications too vast to voice completely. "We should inform the Queen," suggested Elder Moonweaver, her pale scales shimmering with anxiety. "This is beyond our authority to handle." Crystalwing nodded slowly. "Yes, but the Queen has been in deep sleep for over 1,000 years. Waking her will not be a simple matter." "The child marked us," Stormchaser said quietly. "Perhaps that was meant as a message, a way to reach the Queen through us." All eyes turned to the young dragon. Despite their youth, both siblings had shown wisdom beyond their years, and their experience with the human child seemed to have deepened that wisdom further. "Explain, little one," Crystalwing encouraged. "When she touched our foreheads, we felt something being placed within us. Not just a healing mark, but something else. A connection, perhaps? As if she wanted us to be able to find her again, or for others to find her through us?" Lightweaver nodded in agreement. "The mark pulses sometimes, especially when we think about her, and when it pulses we can sense the direction to her dwelling." The elders exchanged significant looks. A connection mark was advanced magic, something that required deep understanding of the target's nature. The fact that an alien child had managed to create such a link, possibly without even understanding what she was doing, spoke of power that was almost beyond comprehension. Elder Crystalwing made his decision. "We will wake the Queen. These events are too significant to handle without her wisdom." The journey to the Queen's chamber took the elders deep into the heart of the mountain, through passages that grew more ancient and powerful with each step. The crystal walls here were not merely groan, but sang with voices that remembered the first days of their civilization. Only the highest-ranking dragons were permitted in these sacred depths. The Queen's chamber was vast, its ceiling lost in shadows despite the brilliant glow of the crystal formations. At the center, surrounded by a garden of singing stones, lay the largest dragon any of them had ever seen. Queen Starheart's scales were like captured starlight, shifting through every color of the spectrum as she breathed. Her wings, folded along her massive body, seemed to contain the depths of space itself. She had been sleeping for over a millennium, resting after the great war that had driven the destroyers from their world. Dragons could sleep for centuries when necessary, their consciousness retreating to deep dreams where time flowed differently. But waking a queen from such deep slumber was dangerous and required careful preparation. The elders arranged themselves in a circle around the sleeping queen and began the ancient ritual of awakening. Their voices joined in harmonies that resonated through the crystal chamber, each note carefully chosen to ease the queen's consciousness back toward waking awareness. It took hours. The queen's breathing gradually changed from the deep rhythm of century sleep to something more active. Her massive eyes opened slowly, revealing depths that seemed to contain the wisdom of ages. My faithful elders. Her voice was like the sound of mountains singing, "What crisis requires my waking?" Elder Crystalwing stepped forward and bowed deeply. My queen, your grandchildren have returned from the surface with news that changes everything we thought we knew about the new arrivals. The queen's great head lifted, and suddenly she was fully alert. Lightweaver and Stormchaser? I felt their distress through the dream realm, but then it ceased. Are they safe? They are, Your Majesty, but their salvation came from an unexpected source. Quickly but thoroughly, Crystalwing related everything that had happened. The queen listened without interruption, her ancient mind processing implications that would have overwhelmed younger dragons. When the tale was finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Bring them to me," she said finally. "I must see these marks for myself." Lightweaver and Stormchaser were summoned immediately. Despite their youth, they showed no fear as they approached the greatest dragon in their history. They had inherited their grandmother's courage, and their recent experience had given them confidence beyond their years. The queen lowered her great head to examine the marks on their foreheads. As she studied them, her expression grew increasingly amazed. "These are not just healing marks," she said finally. "They carry a signature of power that I have not encountered in all my years. But more than that, they carry an invitation." "An invitation, Your Majesty?" Elder Crystalwing asked. "This human child, consciously or not, has created a bridge between our species. These marks will allow the bearer to communicate across the species barrier, to share thoughts and emotions directly, and they contain a location signature. I can sense exactly where this child dwells." The queen rose to her full height, her massive wings spreading to cast shadows across the chamber. "I must meet this child. If she possesses the power to break void wire traps and create communication bridges, she may be the key to finally cleansing our world of the Destroyer's legacy." "But Your Majesty," Elder Void Hunter protested, "the surface dwellers know nothing of our existence. Revealing ourselves could cause panic, possibly even war." The queen considered this. "Perhaps, but consider the alternative. This child has shown power that rivals our greatest healers, and she used it to save our young without any expectation of reward. Such compassion deserves recognition, not hiding." "What do you propose, Your Majesty?" asked Elder Moonweaver. "I will go to her," the queen said simply. "Not in conquest or threat, but in gratitude. She saved my grandchildren, and honor demands that such a debt be acknowledged properly." The elders looked at each other with a mixture of awe and concern. The queen had not left the deep chambers for over 1,000 years. Her emergence would be an event of historical significance. "Your Majesty," Crystalwing said carefully, "perhaps a smaller delegation would be more appropriate. Your presence might overwhelm the child." The queen's eyes sparkled with something that might have been amusement. "Elder friend, this child broke a void wire trap with her bare hands and healed 2 dragons she had never seen before. I suspect she is not easily overwhelmed." Meanwhile, far above in the human settlement, Maya Chen was experiencing the strangest day of her young life. She had woken up feeling different, as if something fundamental about her had changed during the night. The mark on her forehead was warm, and sometimes she could swear she heard distant singing that seemed to come from deep underground. Her mother noticed the change, too. During their morning medical check-in, a routine Dr. Chen had established for all colonists, Maya's readings showed energy levels that were off the charts. Her cellular regeneration rate had increased dramatically, and her neural activity showed patterns that the medical computers couldn't classify. "Maya, sweetheart," Dr. Chen said, trying to keep the worry out of her voice. "Did anything unusual happen yesterday when you were exploring?" Maya looked up from her breakfast, considering her answer carefully. "I found some pretty crystals near the canyon. Maybe they had some kind of energy effect? It wasn't entirely a lie, but Maya could see that her mother wasn't completely convinced. She made a mental note to be more careful about hiding the changes that were happening to her. Throughout the day, Maya found herself drawn repeatedly to the edge of the settlement, looking out toward the deep wilderness where she had last seen the dragons. The warm sensation in her forehead seemed to pulse in that direction, as if something was calling to her. That evening, as the settlement's inhabitants gathered for their communal dinner, the conversation turned to some unusual seismic readings that the geological sensors had been detecting. Dr. Rodriguez, the colony's geologist, seemed puzzled by the data. "It's almost like something very large is moving through the deep cave systems," he explained to the gathered colonists. "But the patterns don't match any known geological phenomena. If I didn't know better, I'd say something was making a deliberate journey through the underground passages." Maya nearly choked on her food. Could the dragon's people be responding to what had happened? The mark on her forehead pulsed warmer, and for just a moment she could swear she felt a vast presence moving through the darkness below. As night fell over the colony, Maya lay in her bed listening to the sounds of Zarion Prime's nocturnal life. But tonight was different. Tonight, she could hear new sounds mixed with the familiar ones, deep, resonant notes that seemed to rise from the very bones of the planet. The dragons were coming. Maya touched the mark on her forehead and whispered into the darkness, "I'm ready." In the depths below, Queen Starheart heard those words as clearly as if the child had spoken them directly into her ear. The bridge her grandchildren described was working perfectly. Tomorrow would bring the first meeting between the ancient dragons and the newcomer humans, and a little girl's compassion would be the foundation for an alliance that would change both species forever. Maya woke before dawn, pulled from sleep by a sensation unlike anything she had ever experienced. The mark on her forehead was no longer just warm. It was actively pulsing with energy that seemed to sync with her heartbeat. But more than that, she could feel a presence approaching the settlement, something vast and ancient rising from the depths of Zarion Prime. She dressed quietly, not wanting to wake her mother, and slipped out of their small habitat unit. The settlement was still dark, with only the automated security lights providing illumination. The energy barriers that protected the colony hummed quietly, their force fields invisible but reassuring. Maya made her way to the center of the settlement, where the main plaza opened onto a clear view of the surrounding landscape. As she stood there in the pre-dawn darkness, she realized she wasn't alone. Other colonists were emerging from their homes, drawn by the same inexplicable feeling that had woken her. Dr. Rodriguez was setting up seismic equipment, his hands shaking slightly as he worked. "The readings are off the charts," he muttered to Dr. Kim, the colony's head administrator. "Something massive is moving through the rock layers directly beneath us." Commander Harrison, the settlement's security chief, was checking his weapons systems with obvious concern. "Could be a geological event. Maybe we should consider evacuation procedures." But Maya knew it wasn't a natural disaster. She could feel the intelligence behind the approaching presence, ancient and powerful, but not malevolent. The mark on her forehead told her that whatever was coming, it was connected to the dragons she had saved. Dr. Sarah Chen found her daughter standing in the plaza and hurried over, medical scanner in hand. "Maya, what are you doing out here? The seismic activity could be dangerous." "It's not dangerous, Mom," Maya said softly, her eyes fixed on the eastern horizon where the first sun was beginning to rise. "It's beautiful." As if in response to her words, the ground began to sing. It started as a low, harmonic resonance that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The crystal formations that dotted the landscape began to glow, responding to some deep vibration that passed through the planet's core. The sound was hauntingly beautiful. like the music Maya had heard in the canyon but amplified 1,000-fold. "What is that?" whispered Administrator Kim, her voice filled with awe. Maya closed her eyes and listened with more than her ears. Through the mark on her forehead, she could understand the meaning behind the music. It was a song of greeting, of respect, and of ancient power awakening after long slumber. "They're announcing themselves," Maya said, not realizing she had spoken aloud until she saw the puzzled looks of the adults around her. "They?" Commander Harrison's hand moved instinctively toward his sidearm. "Who are they?" Before Maya could answer, the eastern sky erupted in light. A massive form rose from behind the distant mountains, wings that seemed to span kilometers catching the rays of the rising sun. At first, the watching humans couldn't process what they were seeing. It was too large, too impossible to be real. But as the figure drew closer, there was no denying what approached the settlement. A dragon, not the small cat-sized creatures Maya had helped, but a being of such immense scale and majesty that it seemed to embody the very concept of dragon from humanity's oldest legends. Screams erupted from the gathered colonists. Some ran for their homes, while others stood frozen in terror. Commander Harrison shouted orders into his communicator, trying to coordinate a defense against something that defied all their preparations. But Maya stepped forward, her small figure dwarfed by the chaos around her. "Wait!" she called out, her voice somehow carrying over the panic. "Please! Everyone wait!" Dr. Chen reached for her daughter, fear making her movements clumsy. "Maya, get away from there! We need to take shelter." "No, Mom," Maya said firmly, her 8-year-old voice carrying an authority that stopped the adults in their tracks. "She's here because of me. She's not going to hurt anyone." The dragon, Queen Starheart, though Maya didn't yet know her name, descended gracefully toward the settlement. As she approached, her true size became apparent. She was larger than any of the human buildings, her wingspan casting shadows across half the plaza. But despite her overwhelming presence, she moved with careful precision, making sure not to damage any of the human structures. The Queen landed at the edge of the settlement, just outside the energy barriers. The force fields flickered and sparked as they struggled to categorize the massive presence, but they held. She folded her wings against her starlight scales and lowered her great head toward the gathering of humans. When she spoke, her voice resonated through both the air and the crystal formations around them, creating harmonics that every human could feel in their bones. "People of the distant stars," the Queen said, her words somehow comprehensible despite being in no language the humans had ever heard. "I come in peace and with purpose. I seek the young healer who saved my bloodline." The translation was automatic, flowing through the mark on Maya's forehead and somehow extending to everyone in the vicinity. Later, the colonists would puzzle over how they had understood the dragon's words, but in that moment, comprehension simply was. Maya stepped forward again, this time making it past her mother's grasping hands. "I'm here," she called out, her voice small but clear in the morning air. The Queen's enormous eyes focused on Maya, and the little girl felt the weight of ancient wisdom studying her. But there was no threat in that gaze, only curiosity, gratitude, and something that might have been recognition. "Child of healing," the Queen said, her voice somehow gentler despite its power. "You saved Lightweaver and Stormchaser, my grandchildren, from a fate worse than death. You broke chains that our greatest masters could not touch. You showed mercy to creatures you had never seen, asking nothing in return." Maya nodded, feeling the mark on her forehead pulse with warm approval. "They were hurt. I couldn't just leave them." The Queen was silent for a long moment, and when she spoke again, there was something like wonder in her voice. Such simple words, yet they carry the weight of prophecy. "Child, Do you understand what you accomplished in that canyon? I helped some baby dragons, Maya said honestly. They were trapped and scared. You did far more than that, the queen replied. The trap that held them was a weapon from the ancient war, designed by destroyers who sought to drain our world of life itself. For 1,000 years, we believed that only death could break such devices. Yet you, a child of an alien species, not only freed them, but suffered no harm in the process. The gathered humans listened in stunned silence as the dragon spoke. Many were still terrified, but Maya's calm demeanor and the queen's obvious peaceful intent was gradually reducing the panic. Dr. Chen stepped forward hesitantly. Are you saying that that my daughter, she broke some kind of weapon? How is that possible? The queen's great head turned toward Maya's mother, and Dr. Chen fought the urge to step back from that cosmic gaze. Your offspring possesses a gift that transcends the boundaries between species. She can touch the deep currents that connect all living things, and she can heal wounds that go beyond mere flesh. We've run tests, Dr. Chen said weakly. She's completely human. No genetic modifications, no alien contamination. Indeed, the queen agreed. Her power comes not from alteration, but from potential. Your species, it seems, carries within it possibilities that even we did not foresee. Commander Harrison, his tactical mind working despite his fear, managed to find his voice. What do you want from us? From her? The queen's attention returned to Maya. Nothing is wanted that is not freely given, but much may be offered, if it is welcome. Maya felt a surge of understanding through the mark on her forehead. She could sense the vast civilization that existed beneath Zerion Prime, the ancient wisdom and power that the dragons possessed. But she could also feel the loneliness, the isolation they had endured since the Great War ended. You want to be friends, Maya said simply. The queen's massive form seemed to relax slightly. Your understanding exceeds your years, young healer. Yes, we would welcome friendship between our peoples, but first, honor demands that a debt be acknowledged. What happened next would be remembered by every human who witnessed it for the rest of their lives. The queen, ancient ruler of a civilization that had existed when Earth's continents were still forming, slowly lowered herself until her great head touched the ground before Maya's feet. I, Starheart the Eternal, Queen of the Crystal Depths and Guardian of the Deep Harmonies, bow before Maya Chen, Healer of Dragons, Bridge between Worlds. Let all who see this know that a debt of honor exists between our peoples, and that this child stands under the protection of the Dragon Realm. The formal words resonated through the crystal formations around the settlement, and Maya felt something fundamental shift in the world around her. She was no longer just a little girl with an unusual gift. She had become something more, a connection point between two completely different forms of life. Maya stepped forward, and with the fearless confidence of childhood, reached up to touch the queen's massive snout. The scales were warm beneath her fingers, and she could feel the vast intelligence behind those starlight eyes. Thank you, Maya said simply. But I didn't save them for a reward. I just wanted them to be okay. The queen's eyes seemed to shine brighter. And that, young one, is precisely why you were the only being on this world capable of breaking the destroyer's trap. Power without compassion is mere destruction. Compassion without power is meaningless kindness. But compassion backed by power... She paused, and Maya could swear she saw something like a smile in the dragon's expression. That can change worlds. The queen raised her head and addressed the assembled humans. We have much to offer each other. Your people bring new perspectives, new ways of thinking that can complement our ancient wisdom. We can share knowledge of this world's secrets, its dangers, and its wonders. But the choice must be yours. Dr. Kim stepped forward. her administrative mind already working through the implications. "You're offering an alliance? A formal relationship between our peoples?" "We offer friendship," the Queen corrected gently. "Alliance implies military purpose. We have been guardians of this world for millions of years, and we have no enemies left to fight. What we offer is partnership in understanding, in healing the scars left by ancient wars, and in building something new from the foundations of respect." Maya felt the truth of those words through the connection the Queen's grandchildren had given her. The dragons had fought their last war centuries ago and had no desire to fight again. They were builders and healers, scholars and artists who had turned away from violence to pursue deeper understanding of the universe. "What about the traps?" Commander Harrison asked. "If there are more of those void wire devices—" "There are 17 more scattered across the surface," the Queen confirmed. "We have known of their locations for centuries, but could never approach them safely. With young Maya's help, however, they can finally be neutralized." Maya nodded eagerly. "I can do that, if it means no one else gets hurt." Dr. Chen looked at her daughter with a mixture of pride and worry. "Maya, this is a huge responsibility. You're only 8 years old." "But she won't be alone," the Queen said. "The mark my grandchildren placed upon her creates a permanent bridge between our peoples. She will always have access to our knowledge and support, and as she grows in understanding, so too will the connection between our worlds." The Queen began to spread her wings, preparing to depart. "I leave you now to consider what has been offered. When you are ready to begin this new partnership, simply call through the mark, and we will answer." Maya looked up at the magnificent being who had just changed her life forever. "Will I see Lightweaver and Storm Chaser again?" "Very soon," the Queen promised. "They are eager to properly thank their rescuer, and they have much to teach you about the gifts you carry." As the Queen prepared to take flight, she looked once more at the assembled humans. "Do not fear this change. Your daughter, all your children, represent hope for futures we had not dared to imagine. Together we may accomplish things that neither of our peoples could achieve alone." With that, Queen Starheart launched herself skyward, her massive wings stirring winds that set the crystal formations singing across the landscape. She rose into the morning sky like a living constellation, her scales reflecting the light of both suns, until she seemed to be made of pure starlight. The humans stood in stunned silence long after she had disappeared beyond the mountains. Finally, Administrator Kim found her voice. "Well," she said shakily, "I suppose we should call Earth and let them know we've made first contact." Maya barely heard the adult conversation that followed. Her mind was still reeling from everything that had happened, but one thought stood out clearly. She was no longer just Maya Chen, the colony doctor's daughter with a strange gift for healing. She had become a bridge between worlds, a healer of dragons, and the foundation for a friendship that would reshape both species' understanding of what was possible. As the excitement died down and the colonists began to return to their daily routines, Maya felt a gentle touch on her shoulder. She turned to find her mother kneeling beside her, medical scanner forgotten in her other hand. "How are you feeling, sweetheart?" Dr. Chen asked softly. Maya considered the question seriously. How did she feel? Different, certainly. The mark on her forehead had gone quiet again, but she could sense it was still there, a permanent reminder of the connection she had forged. She felt older somehow, as if the weight of responsibility had aged her beyond her 8 years. But underneath it all, she felt something else: excitement. The universe had just become a much larger and more wonderful place, and she was going to be part of exploring it. "I feel ready," Maya said finally, and she meant it. That evening, as the settlement buzzed with preparations for contact protocols and cultural exchange procedures, Maya sat by her window looking out at the crystal forests of Zerion Prime. The formations were singing softly in the night air, and sometimes she could swear she heard answering songs from deep beneath the surface. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new wonders. There would be void wire traps to neutralize, languages to learn, and friendships to build between species that had never imagined each other's existence. But tonight, Maya Chen, healer of dragons and bridge between worlds, was content to listen to the songs of two civilizations learning to harmonize for the first time in cosmic history. And in the deep places beneath the mountains, Queen Starheart settled back into her crystal chamber with something she had not felt in over 1,000 years: hope for the future. The age of isolation was ending. The age of partnership was about to begin, all because a little girl had chosen compassion over caution, and two baby dragons had found exactly the right person to trust with their pain.